Greetings. Hello, good morning, good evening, good afternoon, whatever time of day this video finds you. I greet to you and welcome you to Get the Pen. My name is Janine Folks, and this is a midweek edition. I think it's midweek. Yeah, a midweek edition, which is something that I don't normally do. I normally just do the once a week, but I was posed a question and I wanted to address the question to everybody. So rather than just providing an individual response, I figured I will record my response and share it because somebody else might have this same question or issue. And this is dealing with grief and denial. And I know that traditionally was since 1969 when Kubler-Ross put out the 5 stages of grief, which you may be familiar with. And those 5 stages don't necessarily go in any particular order, but one of the stages of grief is denial. And a friend of mine posed the question asking, what do you do? How do you help a person who cannot accept that their loved one has passed? And this, they call it denial. I like to use a different phrase. I like to call it, you could call it extreme hope, because some things are just hard to take, hard to accept. And denial is not a bad thing. I think denial is necessary because what denial does is it gives us time to process. Because when you get hit with a loss so heavy, so deep, that leaves a gaping hole in your soul, you can't accept that. You can't just take that immediately. That is a process, and everybody's process takes however amount of time they need, and it varies from person to person. Every situation is different, every person is different. And I want to give you an example. When I was an intern at a local hospital in Detroit, it was actually Sinai Grace Hospital. Ooh, this may have been around 2006, 2007. And I worked in the ER a lot, with traumas and traumatic death. All death is hard. I mean, even whether it's a tragic accident, whether it's a murder, or whether it's from a deadly illness, there's no easy death. I think sometimes when someone dies of an illness that went on for a while, you get a little time to sort of process with anticipatory grief, because you know what's likely to happen, so you get a chance to kind of think about it. But when you have a sudden death that was totally unexpected, and in many cases totally uncalled for, that's hard. And I'm not saying the others are easy, but in some cases you may have a little more time to process in advance. But when you are hit really hard with a loss, especially when it's tragic, that is hard to take. And most of us, our nervous system can't even handle that type of information. It will short circuit your nervous system, your thought process. You will literally lose your mind. So, as a defense mechanism to your mind, to your heart, there is denial where you can't even process it. So, back to me at Sinai Grace Hospital, we would get a lot of DOAs, or dead on arrivals, from gunshots, different tragic incidents that would take place. So there was this one particular night, actually 2 a.m. on the weekend, we had a young man. He was leaving a club. There was a drive-by shooting. He was riddled with bullets. He probably died on the scene. They were waiting for an ambulance to show up to pick him up. The ambulance wasn't showing up or taking too long, so his friends put him in the car and they drove him to Sinai Grace. And by the time they got to the hospital, he was pronounced dead. So his family had to come identify him. And I knew what was happening, but we knew the family was arriving and the family did not know yet. So they would often call the chaplain in to be present when this news was delivered to their family members. So, me knowing what was coming, I wanted to be there to provide support for this family when they got this terrible news. So, I sat with the sister of this young man who had been tragically murdered. I was, she knew something happened. She didn't really know what. She knew he had been shot. She didn't know really what was happening. So we waited in a waiting room for the doctors to come in and deliver this news. So I'm sitting with her, holding her hand to be a source of support for her. And when the doctor initially told her what had happened, that he had passed, as we held hands, there was no reaction. And I knew that it didn't register what she had just heard. She didn't know what she had just heard. And then it took her a few minutes, and once she realized what he said, that he's dead, and then I felt all those emotions in her body. But it took a while because immediately she could not process that information. Her nervous system had to go in denial, in a protective mode where it couldn't even absorb that. But after a few minutes went by, when she realized what had happened, what the doctor said, and that her brother had passed, that's when all those emotions erupted. And it was very intense. And I use that example to explain how sometimes when you learn of a loved one's passing, that you can't even comprehend it. Like, you can't even process it in your brain. And it takes a while. It could take minutes, hours, days. It could take a while to really realize what has happened, and to even process the how that is a permanent thing, that this is something that we can't reverse or turn around or fix. Once a person is deceased, I mean, barring a miracle, they're gone. And that is hard. That is hard because you can't even fathom or imagine how life can continue with this void, because it doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense to our mind, and it doesn't make sense to our heart. Now, over time, life will show you that this person is gone because they're absent now. They are not answering the phone. You are not seeing them physically. So you know that their presence is gone, but the heart still hasn't processed the fact that this person is gone. So the denial, or the inability to accept that this person is gone, is a coping mechanism, defense mechanism that the nervous system has to do to protect itself. So denial is not necessarily a choice that you make where you just say, oh, I'm not accepting that. It's not a conscious choice. It is your nervous system protecting itself. So it's an involuntary thing that your nervous system knows that you cannot handle this information right now. So it's going to hold it back until you are ready, until you are stronger to process it. And that process, for some people, might take longer than others. We can't even really put a time frame on it. Another example, and this is a book, and she's my shout out for the day, Karen Duffie. Go to Amazon and type in Karen, Karen Duffie, Duffie. Karen Duffie wrote a book called Life Interrupted. If you want to read a story about grief, it's a powerful story. It's a true story. It's her story. But in reading her book, and I just ordered a copy because I would show you the cover, but I'm just recommending you go to Amazon and look for it. Her son was murdered. I can't even remember the year, but you'll see it in the summary of the book. But one of the things that she said in her book that really has stuck with me over the years, because I read her book some years ago, at least 10 years ago, but it's still relevant to this day. It is still powerful to this day. But one of the things she said that Even though she knew her son had passed, she would still get in her car and go drive around looking for him. So it's where in your mind, you know what happened, but your heart is still screaming, no, no. And it would compel you to go look for a person that you know isn't here, because there's that part of you that's hoping by some chance you will find him or you will find her, or that they still exist, that they're here somewhere. And she went looking for him. And that's that where you can't even process that loss, because it's so intense, it's so overwhelming that it is too much for the nervous system to handle. So, in order to protect itself, it can only give you little bits at a time. And over time, life will show you that that person is not here physically. But I like to think that spiritually, we still know that that presence is with us, that that love still exists, because love is something that cannot die. Love is forever. And the love in our hearts can't be taken away, even by physical absence, cannot even separate you from someone who loves you, or someone you love who is a part of your heart. That always stays with you, because you have the memories, you have the knowledge that this person existed and was very crucial to your existence, your being, very intertwined with who you are. So those kind of losses are so intense that you can't accept it, you can't process it. Even though you know on some level, you know there's still that part of you that has the difficulty being okay with it. And you don't have to be okay with it. You never have to be okay with it, because that grief is forever. Because that absence will be felt every time you do something that you know they should have been here too. For example, my sister-in-law, every milestone, now she passed away in 2019 while her kids were, one had just become an adult, one was a teenager. So every milestone that they experience, that grief resets, because you realize she's not here. She should be here for this. She should be here to see this. And because she's not, that wound is like reopened every time you realize she's not here for an event that you feel like she should be here for, or he should be here for. So that grief just carries on, it continues, and it's reoccurring every time you realize they're not here for something that you know they would have enjoyed, something that you know they would have participated in. So you feel that loss forever, for the rest of your life. But what we do is we learn how to manage it better. It never goes away. We shouldn't wish it away. It stays with us because it's a reminder of the intensity of the love. But what we do, we get stronger, and our heart's capacity expands as we fill that void with other activities, other people, other relationships, new people come into our lives. They never replace that person, but it gives us something else to focus on, so that we're not dwelling on that loss. It could be comforting, but we never forget. We never get over it. Grief never goes away. We just get better at managing it. And it's been going on 5 years, and I'm still not okay with my sister being gone. But I just believe she's somewhere, she's around, and I believe she's okay, she's at peace. We are the ones having a hard time. So when someone's not accepting a loss or a death, that is the body, the mind, the spirit's way of protecting itself with information that is just too much, too big to process right now. So as we heal, our capacity increases, and then we can kind of start accepting things once we see that this really happened. We're never okay with it, but we have to accept it because we can't change it. So those are things that occur over time as we heal, because things that shock us like that, it's too much. And our bodies are fearfully and wonderfully made and designed to protect itself, and that's what our nervous system does, protects us with what a lot of people call denial. I hope this has been helpful for you. If you know someone who might be dealing with grief, you can share um, with them. Share, like, subscribe, comment. If you have questions, please put it in the comments, and I will try to see what I can come up with in the response to your question about grief or whatever. But I just wanted to hop on real quick and address that. I could go into more detail, but I'm not. I don't want to go too long. We're almost at 16 minutes, so just know that that denial is your body, your mind's way of protecting itself from shock, because you don't want to go into shock. People do go into shock and they stop speaking, they stop talking, they just go into a shell. And sometimes, that denial, because they just can't deal with that right now. They literally can't. And like I said, it's not a choice. It is a defense mechanism that your body automatically does for you to protect you. I'm praying for you. I'm praying for your peace, for your healing, for your serenity. And I just want to remind, it's going to be okay. It's not okay, but it's going to be okay, because we got to keep going. We have to keep going. We have to keep living. It may hurt right now. It may be hard right now. It could be hard for a while. I don't know. But we got to keep going. So I encourage you to keep going and keep finding peace wherever you can find peace. Find it, take it, because there's enough heartache, but we don't want to dwell on that. We want to look for our healing and our peace. And I'll see you next time. So please comment any questions, anything you want me to expound upon. This has been Janine, folks, and get the pen. Take care.